All right, Kyle, what year was that at the Oscars where the guys came out and the song "It's Hard Out Here for a Pimp" won? Do you remember?
I know when that happened, but I don't remember what year. I remember.
I remember those guys had more fun than like any other humans on the planet that night, and they came out there. And so, anyway, it was funny when we were talking and you were going to come on the podcast. I'm like, what are we going to talk about? And you're like, man, I got some grim stats to throw at you about the Landman business and stuff. That's where I immediately went. It's hard out here for a pimp.
Yep. Yeah. We're out there grinding. So, yeah.
So before we jump into that, tell me how the reign at AAPL is going. Because you're El Jefe, right?
Yeah, president. So I took over July 1, and that'll run through June 30th. So 1 year term as a volunteer for the organization. So halfway through, but it's been really good. Gotten to travel the country a lot, see a lot of folks, and I think it's helped me understand kind of what's really going on in the land business. You know, most of my career I spent working Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and things are great. There's a lot of activity, there's rigs, there's things going on, and you see other parts of the country. You know, we've got members in 44 different states, and not a lot going on in Grand Rapids, Michigan right now, or Jackson, Mississippi, or, some of those areas. So it's been eye-opening, but I think it's been good.
Yeah. Okay. So what else does AAPL do besides throw NAPE? I mean, that's kind of the, from the non-land guy in the industry, that's always, they throw NAPE.
Guys. Yeah, they throw a good party.
Yeah.
So the organization started back in 1955 as a way to kind of organize and let the, at the time, only the oil and gas industry know that landmen needed a seat at the table alongside their maybe more educated counterparts in geology and engineering. And so the main tenets of AAPL really are to provide certification and education, to provide lobbying efforts to make sure that our members are able to work and freely move state to state to get those jobs. And then also have a standards of ethics and procedures to make sure that you're dealing with people that are above board. I think there's times where people think of landmen that fly into town and are sleazy used car salesman, and our goal is to try to bring as many landmen into the fold as possible and hold them to a high standard of ethics and care. And so that's the main differentiator is trying to separate your average Joe to a professional landman.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, this was kind of wild because I don't know that I fully appreciated. You started rattling off facts the other day about landmen and pay and stuff like that. So why don't you, and it was funny because in the middle of the conversation, I'm like, stop, why don't you just come on the podcast? This would be much, so we got about, I bet, a quarter of this conversation done. So fire away.
Yeah. So a thing that's been important to me, when I came in as president, is to ensure the sustainability of this organization and taking a step back. Landmen, as I mentioned before, and we mainly think about with oil and gas. We think about NAPE, we think about energy, but we really think about oil and gas. But landmen are working on right-of-way projects. They're working in lithium, geothermal, wind, solar, a bunch of different things. And so the need for landmen is really at an all-time high. And yet we haven't really backfilled our roster. And so we've got some stats just with AAPL. About half of our members are in that 60 to 65 range, which are nearing retirement. The thing that's scariest about that number, though, is most of those guys are out in the field. And so, again, if you don't know how land work works, you may think about the landman or the land manager inside your internal company. And those guys have very important jobs. That's what I spent most of my career doing, more of in-house stuff. You're doing trades. You're reviewing title before the wells are drilled. You're working with regulatory, but it's a different job than the guys that are actually in the courthouses, pulling the records, filing the documents, knocking on doors and sitting at kitchen tables and negotiating leases on the ground with families. And most of our older members are those guys that are in the field, that are doing the work that has to get done for that well to be drilled. And so we started to ask the question, well, what's happened? Why is no one wanting to go do that job? And there's several factors. There's you're on the road more. Maybe that's not as nice. But if you look at survey data from current generation, they want flexible schedules. They want to be able to.
Comfort suites in small towns in Texas aren't necessarily the nicest.
This is true.
There's probably some
sleeping in your car is not always the best. But pay became a big indicator when we were looking at that. And so we started pulling back historic data. You know, we do compensation surveys and also looking anecdotally at other industries. And sure enough, that the big change is that day rates for field landmen have stayed flat really since 2000. Depending on where you're at, that number may be 400, number may be 500, but it's definitely not doubled like you would see other industries, and even within our own profession. If you look at what COPUS rates have changed, if you look at what the cost of a consulting engineer or consulting geologist, you know, those numbers are up 40 to 50% just in the last 10 to 15 years alone. They're really, you know, almost double. If you look at even just standard inflation, that $400 a day in 2000 should be $770 today.
So I'm gonna cut you off and let's peel this back just a little bit. So the job of we'll call him a field landman, has that changed dramatically kind of over the last 25 years? And here are two things bouncing around in my head that may or may not impact it. One, you had the shale revolution. And so in a weird sort of way, I would have thought there would have been more demand for more field landmen during that thing. But then also we've had, you know, the technological revolution of now you have the internet, now you have social media and stuff. And so what's kind of happened over the last 25 years to that job?
Yes, that job has changed a lot, but I think it is oversimplified, and I haven't done a lot of field work myself. So in my mind, I'm like, well, all the records are online. This should be easy. You should be able to do this from anywhere.
Yeah, you should text Farmer Bob to get the lease.
Yes.
Yeah, and do auto sign.
So some of those things have improved, but some things have not. So even if you're West Texas, it's Midland County, everything is a digital record except for probates. There's no reason for those courthouses to spend the money to digitize this will and this estate, because the likelihood of it coming up is not going to matter. And so someone still has to go get some documents. You also have, which COVID, I think, helped the oil and gas industry a lot of catching up. You know, forever it was like you had to be in person for every closing, even though since Bush passed the No Child Left Behind Act, which is weird that it was part of that, but every courthouse has to accept a digital signature. But still people would be like, no, you got to be here. I want black ink on that one. And so
did I ever, I don't think I've ever told you this. Sorry, I'm cutting you off.
Good.
We sold a company to a South Korean conglomerate. And anyway, you know how closing is. You negotiate the documents, but you sign, you do your signatory pages in advance. And at some point the lawyers just release them to both sides. I get a call from my lawyer. No, they're coming in. I go, what do you mean they're coming in? And it's like literally conference room table, 12 sets of documents, ceremonial pens. The vice chairman's coming. He has a camera crew with him. They're documenting this entire thing. And anyway, I'm like, well, that's the damnedest thing. But okay, so I'm just sitting in my office. My lawyer comes in a few hours like, dude, you got to come give a speech. And I go, what do you mean I got to give a speech? It's like, well, the vice chairman has written a speech and you have to give a speech. And so anyway, I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. So I go in there and I didn't even think I was going to be part of closing. I was just on the board, but company management's there. Kane guys are there. The South Korean conglomerate, the vice chairman gets up and he had written a speech like on, handwritten on big chief tablets and in very broken English, talked about family, love, and faithfulness or something to that effect. And 25-minute speech, and we all had to sit there, we listened to it. And so anyway, they turned to me and I basically gave a speech on family, love, and just kind of parroted his speech back to him. But yeah, it was the craziest thing.
You're in some documentary somewhere. You didn't even know. You check on IMDb.
We all ceremonially signed it.
Yeah.
It was the craziest thing. I wasn't even supposed to sign, but the vice chairman needed to know that the senior Kane guy was signing too. So they created a signatory page for me to globally sign.
That's
all
awesome.
the documents. Yeah, it was the best. Anyway, I didn't mean to cut you
No, it
off,
is. But those old ink on the page. I remember when I was at Chesapeake and we sold all our New Mexico assets to Chevron. Chevron came in also for an in-person closing for that, which made no sense. But with all those Fed units we were assigning, it's triplicates of every assignment because the BLM can't make a copy of a piece of paper for some reason. And so it's all blue ink, and they were stacked up. Henry Hood was the VP of land for Chesapeake. And like his desk was probably this size and it was under paper, this whole way around. It's like sliding paper. Like so the industry has changed some since then. I think
do field land guys still go out and knock on doors?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There's still, think about your parents or grandparents that are like, I don't know, I'm going to run into the bank and talk to her today. And it's like, you don't have to do that, but they don't feel comfortable, even though they can digitally do these transactions. And so they really are, a lot of these folks are like the face of our entire industry, and our guys in-house may have never met, Joe that's 66 and has been signing deals for 40 years.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to make sure that we educate and train, but also equip those guys in the field. I think they could do a better and faster job for companies if they had additional funds and time. And it's a weird either or kind of situation, but like right now with rates not changing, they don't really have time to invest in that additional software. Some companies are nice enough and go ahead and pay for an Inveris account for their guys in the field and kind of push it forward. Some don't. And so if you're asking this guy, like, yeah, I could get that done a couple of days faster, but I'm not going to pay $20,000 a month, for the account to be able to do that stuff. Instead, I'm going to drive out there, pull the book and get what you need. I think it could come across as, Chicken Little, the sky is falling, as we talked about, or whining on one end. But I think it's really looking at kind of an investment in the future, but also like truly calculating what like an ROI would be if you did pay more and got a better product, not just paid more for the same thing. So like some rough numbers, if you looked at, if you could get drill sites ready, and using 20 days faster and using just some rough, say a well's producing 500 barrels of oil a day kind of number, you could afford to double a landman's salary if he could get each unit ready, drill site ready 20 days faster. That unit would produce, if it was, just time value money kind of proposition, it's going to produce an extra $500,000 or $600,000 for that extra $100,000 cost. So like right now, our guys in the field, it's funny if you go back and look at data, in 2000, a field landman made more money than the average attorney in the United States. They made about $98,000 as landmen, about $95,000 as attorneys. Today, landmen are making $105,000, and those attorneys are about $176,000. And so again, landmen aren't attorneys. They work in the quasi world of negotiating contracts and reviewing title and providing advice to folks. But I think something has to give there, or I think you're likely to run into a situation where there's not people in the field that are equipped to do the work. And I think a little bit of a shame on us in the industry. You mentioned the shale revolution. When that stuff's going crazy, basically jobs got siloed. And so it's like, you're in-house, you're really good at managing operating agreements or putting together units. You, on the other hand, are really good at trades. So you're going to be in the BD group and you're just going to be moving stuff around, but you don't know how to review title. You don't know how to drill a well. You don't know how to do anything. And the same thing happened in the field. I mean, even a lot of the big brokerage houses today have a title side and a leasing side. And it's like, they're people that don't know how the agreements work, anything. They're just salesmen. They go get leases. Right. And it's like, that's not good. Like, we need to at least understand.
What's my max I can pay?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I'll come under the max.
I'll come under the max. You'll be happy. Wow.
Yeah. So so from the AAPL standpoint, we've identified kind of this as an issue. We've got a committee, the strategic planning committee has been working for the last 4 or 5 months now, doing interviews with both brokerage groups and operators, and trying to meet in the middle and see what we can do to help. I remind people, AAPL is a 501c6 business league. We are not licensed people. So for antitrust reasons, we can't tell you day rates are now X. We're not real estate agents. We can't say that it's going to be a certain percent, which that got busted up as well.
Yeah, how that hung around for the longest time is beyond me, but
Yeah.
kudos to the real estate
Well, there's a
agents.
lot of them are still clinging to it. And it's like, I'm not taking that standard form. Let's talk about what services do you have? I might throw you a percent. You know?
Yeah. No, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, we can't set a set number, but I think it's trying to get data together and get the right people around to have a conversation.
Yeah. How much of that conversation is driven in part by, holy cow, AI is going to change our whole world?
It's a big part of it. There are leaps and bounds of things that are happening each and every day that you're like, oh, I didn't think that could ever do that. It can.
I mean, I've seen that just since we've in effect been a software company for about a year, a little over a year, and the answers I give to clients literally change every 60 days.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 6 months ago, if you'd have said, can AI read handwriting? It'd say, nah, doesn't. Now it reads handwriting better than I do. We run some stuff through Collide, and it'll come out and I'll go, that's what that says? Holy cow, that is what that says, So it's gotten scary good.
Well, I was using it yesterday, kind of a one-off deal. So Arkansas is one of the few states you can do like catch-all deeds. It's like everything in this county. You don't have to have like perfect legal descriptions. You just have to have one thing that it tags to. So a lot of people will put like, we know that grandma's got this producing well. We've got a pay stub from it. And then anything else she might own passes down. And so I was working on one for a friend yesterday. And I had giant PDF of like years of tax records that listed several different properties. And I had it build me an exhibit just from like in 30 seconds, like take all these PDFs and anywhere where it's got listed section, township, or range, or list a unit name, make those into this grid. And I mean, it's 30 seconds. There's some checking. I don't just print and say it's done. But it saved hours of manual input data, and so that is a thing that, not just AAPL, but I think a lot of white collar data movement, document signing and storage, people that are in accounting, people that are paralegals, I think have to be aware of what tools are in front of them. And if they're not careful, if they don't develop skills to use those tools, that they may get replaced.
Well, and that's where I was going with this, because you're sitting there talking about the great crew change in effect, and how do we get younger people in? How do we get trained in? How do we get a better product out of them? Because the thing I think about life, right, wrong, or indifferent, business runs because, and I'm just going to say guy, but it could be gal, the old crusty guy who's been around forever, if it's an engineering type problem, can go put his hand on the machine and go, oh, this is what's wrong. Or, the old land guy who's like, I'd run the risk on that. Mm-hmm. That's fine, Yeah. And it's a lifetime of doing menial work that creates the old crusty person. And I just wonder if we're going to automate so many of the workflows of that menial labor, because that seems to be where AI is really getting traction. Mm-hmm. Read all these documents and extract all township range, blah, blah. If AI is going to do that, how do we train the old crusty person? And so I worry about that. How do we train the old crusty person? But then, there is a train of thought, and I do not subscribe to this, but there are people out there that are like, I don't give a shit about the old crusty guy. I want young people with data, period. And we'll go figure things out. So
it's a balance. I think, I've got younger kids, and so dabbling in what their use of AI is, whether it's making funny pictures or helping with math homework. But the thing that I remind them is artificial intelligence is a great tool. There's some things that should just be automated. But if you don't have a base level of knowing like what's right and wrong, or what enough of a sniffer to know that's bullshit, you can't check the work. And that's where the balance of these old crusty guys, I think you've got to have somebody that's able to stop and say, well, that came really fast, but there are errors. Yeah. If you don't know to recognize the issue spot, if you will, we're going to create more problems, more headaches from trying to be faster and more efficient.
My take on that is most genius in this world is when someone decides to break a rule, but you have to know what the rules are to know which ones you can break and be able to pull off your genius, whatever it is,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I worry that you're not going to know what the baseline rules are in a world with AI.
So there's a book called Primal Intelligence. The author's, I'm going blank on the name of the author right now, but he's a guy that trained U.S. Special Forces for a long time and teaching them how to think a little bit differently. And he's got a whole chapter on artificial intelligence. And he's, U.S. war games now, instead of pitting team against team, it's team against artificial intelligence. So AI knows every battle, every war that's ever happened in the history of the war or history of the world and how they're gamed and put together. And so if you put an individual man against the computer always wins. If you put a group of 4 or more people together, they always beat the computer. And it's this idea of like, they understand what rules the computer is trying to follow because it's all happened in the past. And so the author kind of makes this point is like a lot of those menial things, they're going to be offloaded to artificial intelligence, but there will never be advancements in any of those fields once we push it over, because all AI is doing is really efficiently doing what's happened in the past.
Pattern recognition.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not, it looks to the average person, wow, that's creative. Look at that picture. It's like, no, somebody's done that before. They just combined 2 things or like, there's nothing that's actually new or innovative or, and so his argument is like that man is always going to have a place in some of this, but should be using these tools. And that's kind of what I would say with the old crusty guy is like, got to get that iPad out, got to get rid of the yellow pad and like try some of these things. But that person's, knowledge and experience, the ability to just touch it and know is going to make them really powerful and really valuable. If they're willing to adopt some of these more modern tools.
Because I do think there's a world, and this is probably showing my podcaster bias, but there is a world in which when the crusty guy retires, instead of that tribal knowledge walking out the door, it's been recorded. And now it's searchable. It's part of the AI enterprise solution of the company and can be queried. And so all the great ideas he or she had through the years are there, and somebody can find them when they go through. So
yeah, the land business, and a lot of businesses are, but it's really kind of apprenticeship, even if you're not out in the field. I mean, I came right out of law school and thought I knew a lot of things and go work at Chesapeake, and you got 6 or 8 rigs running and having to make decisions on, are we going to stop the rig because we don't have everybody signed up? No. Right. We know as long as I'm not trespassing, there's probably going to be some cleanup later. But I was fortunate. Jarris Johnson, I think, who's been on your podcast before as Roland AI, his office was next door to mine. And I was like the little kid over to tick, tick, tick. You got a second? I've got a couple questions. Big stack of stuff, And that's what I think could be very cool with AI is it's almost like a mentor at your desk of like, look over my shoulder. What do you think about this? Am I doing that the right way? And even as it gets better, okay, I'm doing that in Texas. Now, how would that be different in New Mexico? Like what, and then what agency would I need to talk to here to get that approved? Or, like instead of having to like go to a completely different department, or your mentor actually doesn't have any experience in that area. They're just really good at Texas, or whatever the state may be. So, I'm excited about, where things are going and the tools available and the more that are going to become available, for us in the future.
Yeah, I do think, if you think about the AI discussion, the two ends of the spectrum, I don't care what you think about his politics. I don't think anybody on the planet doubts that Tucker Carlson is wicked smart. And Tucker Carlson is AI is baby Hitler. We need to be dropping nuclear bombs on data centers today as we speak. And the whole other side of the spectrum's Mark Andreessen, the venture capitalist. He's like, it's a tool. It's like a fancy hammer. Yeah. We'll unplug it if it gets bad. And I have a tendency, the more and more I'm kind of doing this every day, to kind of lean towards Andreessen. And it is a tool, and being able to use that tool, to your point, because it's there in law. I mean, lawyers are using AI as a thought partner. Hey, take a look at this PSA. What did I miss? you didn't address offsite water disposal, wastewater disposal. Do you want a clause in there about that? You're starting to see that. I think, we're doing a lot in the way of automating what I'll say is kind of G&A type operational oil and gas type stuff. But you can tell that pretty soon we're going to be building bots that are going to be, pumper assistant. Hey, did you think about this? Hey, you're coming up. Did you know the last 3 times you changed the chemicals early, the well petered out or whatever? It's getting there.
Well, and the other piece on that is if it becomes more augmented, if it's like wearables and it's like flagging you, it's not when you went back to your desk and had that conversation,
exactly.
But it's like you've got the meta glasses on or whatever, and it flags, hey, look at this, or even from a legal or land side, as it pulls your eyes to this provision in the document, hey, red flag, yeah. that was included, or this was not in the last draft. They tried to slide that back in on you.
Our safety, we've built a safety application. We don't have anybody using it yet, but basically it's a dynamic JSA. So it goes to the well file. It pulls all the information out of that well file that's pertinent. It goes and grabs the weather. It goes into the OSHA database and incidences with similar situations and kind of lays all this stuff out in a dynamic JSA. Hey, you're going to need to worry about this, this, and this today. The next version of it, once we get a few clients using it, it's literally going to be the cell phone sitting there saying, hey, dude, you're about to flick this switch. Look up and to your left to make sure that valve's closed because this is where Johnny got his head taken off, or whatever. Yeah. It's going to be that level of dynamic.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. AI is this will be outdated by the time this podcast airs as far as
totally.
Which is so cool. I think artificial intelligence is also big right now for physical assets for the land business too. I mean, one of the things, I'm overly dressed for a podcast today because I've got another speaking engagement at lunch, and a lot of things that I've been talking about is with the data centers that are providing all this AI. And how many landmen are needed to get those projects together when you look at
what does a landman do on a data center?
So there's a few different sides there. One is these large scale commercial projects like the Stargate in Abilene. It's a $500 billion. It's the most expensive infrastructure project in the history of the United States.
In Abilene, Texas.
In Abilene, Texas. Adjusted for inflation, it's bigger than the Transcontinental Railroad or the interstate highway system, which is wild.
That is crazy.
Yeah. And so for that, there's actually a land group that not only scouted the sites, but these developers want to control everything. They want to make sure there's no risk factor way down the line. So they're acquiring all mineral rights, all water rights. And getting all the right of ways to be able to get stuff in and out. But like if there's the one in Abilene, there's actually some wells on site. And so they needed to go acquire those wells also. Some of them, I don't know if on that site, but some of the sites they're actually using natural gas wells drilled on site to power so they can be off the grid.
Yeah, Lon's doing all that down with his rocket ships.
Yep. And so there's a direct correlation when you think about, we need mineral title for that. But then just any of these projects, a lot of those developers don't even understand kind of the mineral estate being dominant in the United States, that they would even need to check the minerals. They assume you bought the surface from Farmer John and I've got it all. And so then they're having to come back in and clean all that up after the fact in some locations. The other piece of it, though, is, just with the increased electricity demand in the United States to power all of these, 43% of electricity in the United States is still generated from burning natural gas. And so that's why you see nat gas prices up over the last, 6 months or so. And I would assume that's going to continue to be a trend for the next 2 to 3 years until we can figure out another way to power this big infrastructure project that the current administration has basically bet the future of the economy on, is that we've got to remove all red tape and plow ahead and let the United States be dominant in AI. And to do that, we need, I think the number's like 3 or 4 times the number of data centers in the United States to be constructed over the next 3 years. So land's going to be a big part of that. I'm actually speaking. There's the National Data Center Forum is here in Houston in April, and they've asked AAPL to come be a keynote at. So
cool.
I think there's a recognition there. AAPL did a cool partnership with the Ham Institute at Oklahoma City. It's Harold Ham set up a deal through Oklahoma State, his alma mater. It's a big research.
I've actually been there.
Yeah, it's really
nice. They did a good job with it.
And so they started sometime middle of last year on this new project, and they've got all the big players from the West Coast: Amazon, Meta, OpenAI, and then several developers. NextEra on the renewable side, Devon, Expand, Continental, and then AAPL is the only kind of nonprofit business league that's a part of it. And we have monthly meetings that are kind of roundtable discussions. We're actually going to have one at NAPE here in a couple weeks. So all the CEOs of those big companies are going to be at NAPE for the first time and kind of see how energy companies work and how we're so nimble. That's what really has attracted them to energy companies to help them build these data centers. Is engineers have been figuring out how to make things work basically on the surface of the moon. If you think about West Texas, very remotely, without power for a long time, and that's the kind of help they're going to need to get these projects up and going.
So we did a conference called Fuse for a couple of years, and we were trying to be the South by Southwest for energy tech. And anyway, we've morphed into our software company, so we're not doing it anymore. But literally one of the most fascinating discussions I had is somebody from a renewables company came up to me and said, "Hey, Chuck, so weird as this sounds, I want to meet an oil and gas guy." And I'm like, "Sure, let's go find one. You know, what's up?" And they said something to me that is so intuitive, but I hadn't really thought of it. It was kind of like an oh shit moment of, "Guy, you're right." And so anyway, we went and found a chief operating officer of an oil and gas company of a rather large one. And we had a beer for an hour and a half. And the renewables pitch was, "Hey, I just built a wind farm out in West Texas. You literally, as an industry, produce 100 million barrels of oil a day, and you refine it and you get in. No one has scaled a business like energy. And I need to know how to scale, because if I ultimately want to have one wind farm, that's great, but I want to have hundreds of them. How do you scale? And I want to even take it down to the level of, does that mean I drug test employees? You know, and they're just, it was one of the most fast. I would give anything, one, if I didn't have too many glasses of wine during it, because I forgot half of it because we were rolling in the good wine. But the second thing was just being able to have that captured on tape would have been fascinating, because it was stuff I never even thought of.
Yeah.
And the oil and gas business has solved it years ago, scaling.
Yep.
And you just don't appreciate just how big this industry is and how much shit we do literally every day.
And it can't stop. That's the other piece it's like, no, Christmas Day, there's guys working out in the middle of nowhere making shit happen. So when you go flip that light switch, the power comes on.
And when we drop a barrel of oil somewhere on the ground, it's newsworthy.
Yes.
It's, you would think that should be a daily occurrence. It's not. We're so good at this.
Yep. Yeah, we're very, very efficient, very, very clean, heavily regulated. I mean, again, I think there's a lot of scrutiny that comes, but I think the average Joe doesn't understand, and then also doesn't understand the scale to make it all work. It's fascinating business.
Yep.
So
when's NAPE this year?
So February the 18th through the 20th. So it's like a week later than normal.
You know what February 18th is, don't you?
February 18th. It's the day after my wife's birthday. So
John Travolta's birthday.
Oh,
the only reason I know it is it's my brother Kenny's birthday too.
That's
I always text him, "Happy John Travolta birthday."
That's great.
Exactly.
And this year, a little bit in new format. So the last several years, they've had like a charities concert kind of going on Wednesday night. But it was a separate ticket and kind of confusing. And so this year, it's all one big icebreaker welcome party. There'll be an area in the lobby where you can still get drinks, but not be loud, and you can talk. And then inside, it's a Sammy Kershaw concert.
Oh, cool.
Which is going to be sweet.
So that's kind of Wednesday.
That's Wednesday night, yeah.
Yeah. Cocktail party starts at 5 or something. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, they've got a governor's forum before that, which again is free to come in with your badge, even if you didn't register for the business conference. So, I encourage everybody, if you haven't been in a few years, I mean, the last several years in NAPE, I would say Houston felt as busy as Shell Boom, but the NAPE floor was more manageable. Not small, but we're running 8,000 to 9,000 instead of at the peak. It was, fire marshal, one man in, one man out at 20,000 on the floor. But so I'd encourage people, if you're still coming to Houston and going to the parties, grab a badge, come in, come see some of those things that are free add-ons that are kind of cool. special events that just, if you've got a badge, you can attend, not just be out there on the expo floor.
Do you know who John Linker is? John was a long time oil and gas investor, was at First Reserve for a while. Anyway, John had the most amazing ability to capture everything in a sentence, and that sentence was always funny. And one year, I think it might have been 07, 06, somewhere around there, natural gas was at $12 an M and all that. And John walked out and I go, John, how is it in there? And he goes, man, it's so rocking and rolling. The bankrupt companies have 2 booths. I was like, that's such a Linker thing to say.
That's great.
So Wednesday night, we got the kickoff, Sammy Kershaw. That'll be cool. And then Thursday, exhibit open all day and then half day on Friday.
Yep, and they're giving away, I'll butcher the name, but Grenadier, they got a really awesome several $100,000 vehicle that they're giving away as the prize at the end. So last several years they've done, if you stuck around to noon on Friday and your name happened to get pulled out of the hat, you might have won a 4-wheeler or a jet ski. They got a partnership this year and have a really sweet giveaway. So again, would encourage people to stick around for that. More details would be on the NAPE website. So I don't butcher the name.
And in terms of exhibits, big companies, are we doing any special power alleys or things like that?
Yeah, the hubs have been really good for us. The first one was Bitcoin that we launched 4 or 5 years ago, and that's still there and going strong. Minerals and non-op has become another really important sector of our overall business, but are kind of seem separated from everybody else. So they kind of have their own lounge and area to hang out, and know that if you're looking to just play in that space and not looking at operated prospects, that's together. Critical and rare earth minerals is a new one this year. So we've had one of our oldest chapters is actually up in Tahoe. So we've got an event coming up in April called the Mineral and Land Resources Institute. So it's copper and silver and gold mining guys. They've added some lithium stuff, and so they're going to kind of run a hub. I think there'll be a lot of interest there with the lithium activity in the Smackover, not just in Arkansas, but East Texas and Louisiana, even a little bit in Mississippi now. Then we added a couple of other hubs, just again with current administration being really open for all energy development. So there's an offshore hub this year. And I just actually heard yesterday, so they had the first offshore lease sale for the first time in 4 or 5 years was in late December. 30 companies showed up. I think there was 1 million acres leased for $371 million. So a lot of activity going back offshore into the Gulf, which is going to be exciting. Again, different work than what you think about for most landmen, but there are still landmen that manage those operating agreements and put those units together. And then the other hub is data centers. So again, with our connection with the Ham Institute and some of these other groups, there are going to be some developers there that are looking for prospects. So another thing that I kind of rant sometimes when I get on a roll or a ramble with folks is, I think NAPE has a great opportunity, and a lot of our legacy oil and gas companies, they own a lot of surface sometimes that they don't even catalog in their own systems that they got from acquisitions over the years. And if you're a large surface owner, a Chevron and Exxon, you should definitely be talking to these data center developers that you could actually bring some value forward for your shareholders. If you acquired something in middle of New Mexico and you don't have any producing assets around, it just came with some big acquisition, is like put together some teasers and prospects just to show all your surface. And whether you're selling that to a data center developer or leasing it to a wind or solar group, I think there's a lot of value add and synergies there that NAPE is a great marketplace for. So I would encourage folks to look at that.
That's a good point. My kind of rant over the last couple of years has been, if you think you're in the business of selling natural gas, you're mistaken. You're in the business of selling electrons. Mm-hmm. And you need to think through how that is, because if we let big tech decide, they're going to all want to be nukes.
Yes.
And so if I had a bunch of natural gas kind of stranded out in West Texas, a lot of these data centers don't have to be in Houston, Texas, or outside DC, particularly kind of the more latent type training stuff that can shut down for 8 hours at a time and it doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. That is cheapest source of electricity. Mm-hmm. So I always joke if I were the mayor of Monahans, I'd upgrade the Bennigans so that I could host Zuckerberg and, let's send it in.
Yeah. Yeah. He can land his jet right out there on the desert. So.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't even need an airstrip.
Yeah, dude, we don't need an airstrip, whatever.
That's funny.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, Kyle, appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you having me on. Been a big fan of what you guys are doing for a long time. And I think it's a good opportunity to kind of spread the word on what AAPL is working on, what we're doing, and at least start that conversation around.
How do people get in touch with AAPL?
Landman.org is kind of the website, and there's an info at. It's kind of a catch-all email address. You can also do that through the NAPE site. It's the same kind of setup. But yeah, that conversation around day rates, I think, is really important. I don't think it's completely hashed out yet to say that that every company has to just start paying people more and that's going to solve the problem. But AAPL is also looking at answering some of the needs of our operators and figuring out some better field education and better training. So hopefully people are able to do the job faster and more efficiently.
That's always my thing is anytime you're going into the C-suite and you need more money, whether it's a piece of software or a human being out in the field, whatever, show me an ROI.
Right.
I mean, and that's just, that's quantifying that and making that case is the only way to kind of rattle the C-suite's cage. Because at the end of the day, they honestly don't care if employees are happy or not.
No, no. The analogy though, and I think there are some of my colleagues that don't necessarily love this analogy, but it's a little bit like you're getting bids to renovate your house. And so you have one crew come in and they just sounds dirt cheap and sounds amazing. But they've got no letters of recommendation, no one's that's used them. And there's this fear of like, well, if they screw this up, how much is it going to cost to fix what they screwed up? And so that's kind of that analogy of if you had a title bust and it's cost several $1 million to cure later down the line, and how much time was production off while you had to completely shut that well in versus, no, it's a pretty stand-up group. I may be paying a little bit more, but like I feel comfortable enough with this guy. They can be around my family. I'd let them, like they seem really above board. They let me know if there is a mistake. They, quick to respond. And those are the groups that I think I would personally be advocating for to make sure that we are compensating correctly and making sure that they're able to stay in the business and able to grow their businesses and hire more people. You're always going to have those, fly by night groups that just try to come in when prices are high, and they're kind of hard to regulate. So it's not necessarily an across the board, but it's kind of pay for quality and know what you're getting. And then I think you will see the returns on that.
Yeah. No, good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.